Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be reworking the sump pump system that we have. It's starting to die on us and it's overflowed a few times. The previous owner installed this trash can here with a sump pump inside. This is being fed by the washing machine and the condensation from the AC unit, and that's it. But it's not done right and it should be in the ground, so I'm going to go ahead and dig that hole out that's already there and put in a new sump pump basin and cement that into the ground. So stick around and I'll show you guys how I do this. The reason why we need a sump pump here is because our sewer line is actually at the ceiling or right below the floor of the upstairs, so I need something to get the water from the floor of the basement up to the ceiling of the basement, and that's where the sump pump comes in. It's also really helpful to have one of these in-ground sump pumps if you have a basement, because if it ever does rain really hard, this will prevent it from overflowing or flooding your basement. So if anything does flood in here, this is the lowest point in the basement. Everything will drain down towards this and pump it out before it does much damage. Now, a few things that I'm going to be using for this is really tight space, so trying to dig this hole down into the ground is pretty tough, so having a short shovel and pick makes this a lot easier once you get down a few feet into the hole. And having a few buckets on hand is really nice to be able to get that dirt out of the basement. I'm getting pretty close to the depth that I need for the sump pump basin, but it's getting really hard to get the shovel all the way down there and be able to lift it up for each scoop. So I'm just using a smaller container, filling that up down at the bottom of the hole, then carrying it out, and that's a lot easier. It saves your back from having to travel as much up and down. Alright, so that's just about finishing the hole right there. I've dug about 6 inches around, 4 to 6 inches around the container, and then 4 inches below the bottom of the container. So it'll be completely encased with concrete. It'll be plenty strong at that point. Now I can get rid of that old sump pump. I don't need this anymore. That trash can is quite the eyesore and it's been in the way in my shop for a long time. So I'm really excited to get this out of here and open up the space a little bit more. Now I'm going to start burying these lines. I don't want pipes going across this area, or else taking that trash can doesn't do me any good. I want to be able to use this space for storage, and so I'm going to bury that pipe down in the concrete. So I'm going to cut a quick trench right here. And so I rented this electric Makita. This is indoors. We don't have a ton of ventilation, so you're going to want to have some ear protection, safety goggles, and a respirator. But I also wanted to go with the electric just so that I don't have all those fumes inside the house. This was a little bit easier. I've got a vacuum hooked up trying to get most of that dust, but you can see it still makes a huge mess. Now that I have that trench cut, I can go ahead and break out the concrete that's there, and I'll start laying the pipes. Now I actually recorded laying all the PVC pipes in here and gluing everything in place, but my phone died in the middle of that recording and somehow it did not save that, so sorry I missed that part. Now I'm gonna cut a little bit into the concrete so that this sump pump basin will drop down about a ½ inch to an inch below the surface of the concrete. I want this to be the lowest point, so if any water does get in our basement, it will go right towards here and drain into that sump pump basin. And this is actually the lowest point in the basement because if any water does, and in the past it has a little bit, it will puddle up right here where this basin is. So this is where my phone died and I lost that video, so I just ran the PVC down through that trench that I cut, and now that's supplying the water into the sump pump basin, and now I need to run the plumbing from the sump pump all the way up to the plumbing and the ceiling. So I put that piece of plywood there to cover up the massive hole that's there. I believe it's a 4-inch hole in the side of this basin, and I need it to be a lot smaller so the concrete doesn't come flooding in. So that's temporary. Over time that's just going to fall right off, or I can take it off once the concrete dries and that'll be perfectly fine. So in order to keep this space as usable as possible and keep these pipes from getting in the way, I'm going to take the line going from the sump pump up to the sewer. I'll go straight up until I reach where the stairs are going up there at a 45-degree angle, and I'll follow that all the way up to the ceiling. This way the pipe's not going to get in the way. It'll be anchored to the ceiling here and it'll stay safe, and I'll be able to use the space as much as possible.
Fill the whole thing. Oh, there it goes. That's it.
Now the sump pump works. I'm going to go ahead and fill in that trench with concrete and all around the sump pump basin. And something you might want to consider is having some weight on top of that sump pump basin, or filling it up with water like I did. If it's empty, it will want to float on top of that concrete, and it could cause you some trouble of it trying to rise up out of that hole. So I'm going to keep that full of water. I just unplugged the sump pump so that it'll hold the water in there while I'm filling this up with concrete. Now something I was trying to do to make sure that the concrete got in every area down in that hole was to make it a little bit more wet than I should have. Now I would make it significantly drier than this. I wanted to make sure it filled every space down there, but I ended up having to add a few bags of just dry concrete mix into the hole to just absorb some of the water. I expected some of it to soak into the dirt around, but it didn't absorb as much as I expected. So this is a whole lot wetter than you want it to be. Now as it starts to set up a little bit, I have a little bit more control and I can smooth this out and taper it down so that everything's going downhill towards that sump pump basin. I just took a wet towel and cleaned up the top of that basin and all the concrete around. This made a little bit of a mess, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that up before it fully dries. And I'm actually planning to epoxy the whole shop floor pretty soon, so I'm not worried about the concrete sticking to the rest of it. It's nice and smooth right now. If there's a little bit of residue left over, I'm perfectly fine with that. I hope you guys enjoyed this one or found it helpful. If you did, let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. I'm definitely not a professional, so I'm sure there's ways to improve, but this is 100 times better than what we had previously, and I'm really excited about the extra space in my shop. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not already, and check out some of these other videos I think you guys might enjoy. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.